You got to wait for a gapper.
That is fair down the right field line. Giambi on his way to third. And they're going to wave him around. The throw misses a cutoff man. Shot into the plate. Out of the plate. Derek Jeter with one of the most unbelievable plays you will ever see by a shortstop.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning. Hope your Wednesday is off to a fabulous start. They call it Hump Day. Getting ready to roll right into the weekend. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. If you don't know, we're here every single day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. You can join us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports, and that's where it's happening. Chatterbox Sports, all kinds of stuff going on. We got you covered in high school, college, pro. You can also join us on Facebook at Chatterbox Sports. We always invite you to subscribe and flip on the notification switch when our clips come out. We were just talking about the Tracy Jones stuff yesterday. The guy's unbelievable. He's back tomorrow. I'm telling you, it's must see or listen because we do come to you in podcast form. Wherever you get your podcast, you can check it out, Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever, because the guy is an absolute riot. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Thom Brennaman TV, Thom Brennaman TV. All right, here we go. The Bengals are back on the practice field today, getting ready for Sunday's game down in the Big Easy. Cincinnati, a 1.5-point favorite over New Orleans, who put up 39 against the Seahawks in a win on Sunday. They had Andy Dalton at quarterback. He started the last two. He lost to Minnesota. The victory over Seattle, we'll see if he's playing again in place of the injured Jameis Winston against his longtime team this Sunday. Now, in just a few minutes on Wednesday, some of you may know, some of you may not. Every Wednesday, we call it the big interview. So we find someone and have an extended interview. Well, today, the big interview is with the big fella, one of our favorites, one of your favorites. Former Bengals standout player and longtime broadcaster, Dave Lapham. We will learn about his upbringing in Massachusetts, his career with the Bengals, played in a Super Bowl, and get his thoughts on the current state of the Bengals. So stand by for that. Should be awesome. He is the best, great storyteller, fun guy, likable guy, lovable guy. Can't wait to have him. Baseball's division series are underway. Kicked off yesterday. And boy, did they start with a bang. Former Red Nick Castellanos, who did not have a good year, signing that $100 million deal this year with Philadelphia, leaving the Reds. He went 0 for 7 in the wild card playoffs. 0 for 7, so his struggles roll right into the postseason. Well, game 1 yesterday of the division series, Castellanos 3 hits, 3 RBIs, as the underdog Phillies chopped down Atlanta 7-6. And he's not known as a great defender, but he made a spectacular catch in a 1-run game in the 9th inning yesterday. Game 2 is today. Zach Wheeler against Kyle Wright in Houston. Dusty Baker down there. We love Dusty. Seattle jumps all over Justin Verlander. The Mariners lead 7-3 going into the 8th inning. The Astros get 2 in the 8th. Then get a walk-off 3-run home run in the 9th by Yordan Alvarez en route to a truly shocking 8-7 win in the best-of-5. Tell you what managers do in the postseason in this day and age is not what they do in the regular season. Now, it's a little bit different if you're in a game 6 or 7, and I saw this in Arizona when Randy Johnson in the 2001 World Series had won Game 6 as a starter to send it to Game 7. Okay, and they bring in Johnson in the 9th inning of Game 7 for 1 inning. Game 1 of this series, Scott Service, manager of the Mariners, he brings in Robbie Ray in Game 1. Robbie Ray, former Cy Young Award winner, brings him in to pitch the 9th. And, I mean, he gives it up big time. In the Big Apple, Garrett Cole. Now, here's a guy who, in past years, has not delivered when the postseason comes around, but he continues to get better and better every year. And, man, was he dominant for the Yankees over Cleveland. Yesterday, 4-1 win. Cole pitches into the 7th. He allows 1 run, strikes out 8. 1-0 Yankees lead, best of 5. And out west, told you yesterday, during the regular season, the Dodgers and Padres played 19 times. The Dodgers won 14 of the 19. Well, that dominance continued in Game 1 of that series last night. 5-3 the final. The LA bullpen pitched the final 4 innings of shutout baseball to take a 1-0 lead in the series. Both National League series continue today and or tonight. American League has a day off. Then on Thursday, the American League will resume Game 2 in both of those series. National League has a travel day. A couple of other notes, by the way, in football. I don't want to forget about this. Good news, the Tua is back on the practice field today for the Dolphins. Now, he's still in concussion protocol, and no word as to whether or not he'll start yet on Sunday. But great to see that he is back. And one final basketball note, we talked about this a little bit the other day, the whole Draymond Green thing. Blasting his teammate in the face with a punch a week ago in practice. Well, for Steve Kerr and the Warriors, that's good enough because apparently he's coming back to practice today. So you guys have been referred to, before we get to Dave Lapham and before we take a timeout leading up to Dave Lapham, I want to know if you guys are comfortable, because I'm thinking to myself, your new nicknames should be Ham and Egg. Thought about this driving in today, and I just want to know if you guys are comfortable being referred to as Ham and Egg. In other words, the Ham and Eggers, to quote Tracy Jones. Casey McAllister, Paul Fritchner, and even Brandon sitting over there like the dunce wearing the cap in the corner. Are you guys comfortable with that charge? Is everything okay?
I think we have to take it as a compliment, right, Tom?
Yeah.
You're not asking me. I'm asking you.
I mean, I think I would take it as a compliment. We're hardworking fellows, and we know how to get the shit done, and we ain't no prissies.
We're on board with it, Tom.
Okay, Ham and Eggers it is. I went back and watched that clip that you guys were kind enough to post on social media yesterday of that opening segment, opening lines from Tracy on his as he says, 6-star all-inclusive resort down in Mexico somewhere. Don't know the town. And when we were doing the show and he referred to the construction, I really couldn't hear it much. But on the clip, you imagine waking up, spending all that money, going on vacation, and that's how you wake up when he wasn't getting woken up by Chatterbox Telemundo.
No. I mean, unless we managed to get a jackhammer and start tearing up the street. But
that was the thing that I said to you guys before we started the show today is if we could hear it that clearly coming through the iPhone, I assume it was an iPhone that he was using to call into the show yesterday. The iPhones are pretty good at muting that ambient noise. If we could hear it as clearly as we did from as far away as we could see it, it must be pretty loud down there. Man. I'll give it to him. On that one. It must be pretty bad.
Get the other room, Trace.
Yeah.
Get the other room.
I'll be, he said he was going to go downstairs and he was going to go ahead and flip a baseball card, one of his cards from his playing days, to see about getting that room upgraded. Changing rooms, I guess, was a deal. All right, we're really excited to have Dave Lapham with us. His interview coming up next on Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, And if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Sweeney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Sweeney, the original used car superstore.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We do this every Wednesday. We call it the Big Interview, and I'm really excited about today's guest because I've known him for a long, long time. Dave Lapham. You listen to him for over 30 years on the Bengals broadcast. He's also done stuff for Fox on coverage of the Big 12 Conference. He's even done the NBC NFL on NBC, going back a number of years. He was born in June of 1952 in Massachusetts. It's hard to believe that makes him 70 years young. I just cannot believe it. He grew up in a town called Wakefield, Massachusetts, then went to Syracuse, and was in the famed Newhouse School of Communications there. All-conference performer, team captain for the Orangemen. Third-round pick in 1974 of the Bengals. Played for 11 years. And we're going to ask him about this 10-year personal services contract he signed with Donald Trump, then the owner of the New Jersey Generals of the USFL. Dave Lapham, before we get to all of that, I hope you're doing great today. We thank you sincerely so much for your time. What was life like? I always love asking every guest we have. What was your childhood like growing up in Massachusetts?
It was great. And first of all, thanks for the opportunity to visit with you, Thom. You're a great one. No question about it. It had an unbelievable sports life, growing up as a young kid. As the season changed, that was my favorite sport, whatever the sport was in that particular season. And it's kind of funny because my dad was a 5 foot, maybe 11 inch, maybe 185-pound artist, and technically illustrated by trade. Never played a sport in his life. Didn't know if a ball was stuffed or had air in it. And my mom was about 6 feet tall, like in the 6th grade. She was taller than her male teacher. So she had 3 sons. All of the sons went to her side genetically, and all 3 got college scholarships, 2 for football, 1 for basketball. And my dad's like, what the heck is going on? Because, he when he went to the games, he really didn't understand what was going on all that much. But we all played sports. We all loved sports. And that was a big, big part of our upbringing, just pickup games, whatever it was. In the neighborhood, we lived in a neighborhood where there were a ton of kids, and a bunch of kids around the same age, like within a 3-year age span where, we had enough kids to play 9-on-9 baseball, 11-on-11 football. So we had a lot of fun growing up, and it was very, very sports-centric for sure.
When you were coming out of high school, were you one of those guys that was a heavily recruited guy, or were you a guy that maybe was a little bit off the radar from some of the quote-unquote big boys?
I think I was probably in the middle. I mean, I don't think I was like on everybody's list, to as far as a blue chip recruit or whatever. But got recruited by a couple of schools, out in that era, the Pac-10, the Big Ten, the ACC, and then schools in the East. Being from the East, Penn State, Syracuse, Boston College, schools like that. I was always big. I mean, when I was a freshman, I was 6 feet, couple hundred pounds as a freshman. grew to like 6'3", 250 as a sophomore. And then when I graduated, I was like 6'4", 275.
Wow.
But I would get up to like, in the 260s or whatever for football, and then lose weight for basketball. Basketball was my favorite sport.
Mm-hmm.
I got some all-league honors as a basketball player. I thought I was going to be the next Wayne Embry. In fact, Wayne Embry is the one that recruited me to try to go to Miami of Ohio. He said that's where he went, and I met him at a basketball camp. And so he said, you could play football and basketball at Miami. They'd probably let you play both sports. But the story on Wayne Embry was I was a sophomore in high school. And like I said, I was already like 6'3", about 250. So I'm at this I went to a basketball camp every summer because there were no football camps back then, no contact camps, not even any football special skills camps or whatever. So I'd go to basketball camp every summer and try to improve as a basketball player and, play very competitive people in these camps and hold my own a little bit. So Wayne Embry's at a camp, and he's giving a lecture on offensive rebounding. And it's a hot day, man. And he's got the goatee, and the sweat's just coming like a faucet at the end of his beard, and just dripping. And he calls a person out of the crowd of campers to be the guy that's going to box him out. So he picks me, and I go over to to do this little demonstration with Wayne Embry, and I'm thinking, wow, this is the biggest human being I've ever seen. So the first, they take a shot, and I didn't really box him out, but the ball ended up in my hands, and the camp erupts, and he's embarrassed. Embry's now he's pissed, and he goes, we're doing this again. I'm telling you what, man. The ball goes up. I go to box him out. He runs me over. The first thing that hit was my chin on the asphalt, and then my hands cut my chin, scraped my hands up. I mean, he just flattened me, man. And then he helps me up. He goes, man, hey, I'm sorry, young man. He says, I overdid it there a little bit. I said, I've never felt anything like that. That felt like a tidal wave. I can't believe how strong you are. He goes, well, you'll see when you go to college next year. I said, I'm not going to college next year. He goes, you're not? I said, no. He said, how old are you? I said, I'm 15. I'm a sophomore at Wakefield High School. He goes, oh, my God. He goes, I'm really sorry, young man. It
That's
was crazy.
A great story.
It was crazy.
You end up going to Syracuse, and I got to tell you, and shame on me, as I'm getting prepared for this interview, and I'm reading about a guy named Ben Schwartzwalder.
Yes.
He was a head coach at Syracuse, 24
Right.
years, won a national championship there. He coached names like Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, Larry Zonka. He was running a big-time program there at Syracuse. I mean, for the younger generation out there right now, they've had their ups and downs through the years, and Dick McPherson and on and on and on and on. But what was it about this guy that made you want to go play for him?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I got recruited by the running back coach, by the gentleman by the name of Jim Shreve, who was very businesslike, very professional. He came to the house in a suit, and he had on a hat with a feather. It was like a business deal for him. And he impressed the heck out of my parents. So I guess that was a big plus for him. And I really liked him as well, and scheduled a visit. And like you said, I started walking through, the place, the athletic, and it's been obviously built up, and Carrier Dome wasn't there. I played at old Archbold Stadium, which was a pit, really. It was a concrete seats. There were no backs to the seats. It was just all a concrete stadium. They tore that down and put up in the Carrier Dome, but they had all the memorabilia in the athletic building of these great players, these great running backs, and there were some really good linemen as well, All-American linemen, that played in the National Football League. And I'm looking at the history and tradition. They won the national championship in 1959, and that was before Jim Brown even got there. And Ernie Davis, of course, was a Heisman Trophy winner, died of leukemia after he was drafted in the first round by the Cleveland Browns. And there's been, movies and books written about Ernie Davis and his life. He was president of the student body as well as the Heisman Trophy winner at Syracuse. You talk about a guy that's the All-American guy. So I start, looking at all this information, all these, and I'm thinking, man, this is a pretty good situation here potentially. The other thing I liked about it, Thom, was they were independent, and teams could be independent back then and not be affiliated with the conference. And so I thought, I get a chance to go play teams in the West Coast, down south. Like we played Miami, Florida. We played University of Washington. We played Big Ten schools. Of course, we played Penn State, Boston College, the schools in the East. We played North Carolina State. So we played, teams in the ACC. So it was like getting a taste of football all over the country a little bit and kind of opening your eyes to traveling the country a little. And I thought it's just far enough away from home. It was like a 5-hour drive. It was like I wanted to get away, but not where my friends and family couldn't get there. It was like prohibitive to travel there. So it kind of checked a lot of boxes for me. And plus, at the time, I was interested in being a lawyer. And they had, like you said, the Newhouse School is what I ended up getting into after I was there. But initially, I wanted to do law. So it's like pre-law, they had the Maxwell School of Citizenship, which was rated amongst the top in the country, as well as the Newhouse School. And I thought, if I do well in the Maxwell School, I'm going to be able to get into a good law school. And I just found that I was doing fine with it academically. I just didn't like it like I thought I would. It's like, man, this. I don't know. It's not like Perry Mason. You're not going to be, having these trials that are just like seat, you're on the edge of the seat all the time. I'm thinking most of these lawyers, man, it's just a mundane desk job. I'm not into that. So I transferred from the Maxwell School to the Newhouse School. So I got a degree in communications and a minor in political science from some of the courses that I took for the pre-law stuff.
You get drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, and your first coach is Paul Brown. Look, for the young people out there in this day and age, internet, information readily available just like that. But that was a different time, very different time. How much did you know about Paul Brown going into the Bengals situation after they drafted you? And what did you come to learn right quick about Paul Brown once you got there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like you talked about Ben Schwartzwalder. He had 24 straight non-losing seasons at Syracuse. 24 straight with all the great recruiting that he did. And he was a powerhouse program in the East at that time. And he and Paul Brown were friendly because, Paul obviously was doing his thing and having tremendous success with the Cleveland Browns and, with the great players that they had in that era. And Ben Schwartzwalder was having his run. And Paul Brown drafted Jim Brown, and he drafted Ernie Davis. He drafted two of Ben Schwartzwalder's running backs, two of the great backs. So they had a lot of communication, over those time frames about those guys as football players and human beings and everything else, the pros and cons of both of them. There weren't any cons to Ernie Davis, but there were some cons to Jim Brown. But they were very, very friendly and very, very respectful of each other's successes and how they garnered those achievements, what they did. They were different in how they did it. I mean, Ben Schwartzwalder was old school. We ran an unbalanced line, and we just ran the football. I never dropped back to pass block until I got to training camp with the Bengals. All we did was run the ball and play action pass. So we just, it was grind it out. It was pound the ball. So, it was that part of football. I got a big taste of at Syracuse with Ben Schwartzwalder as the head coach. And I was honored to be Ben Schwartzwalder's last captain. He retired from the game right after I got out of Syracuse, and going over to his house and looking at all the things that he had in his house and listening to the stories that he would tell of all of the great players that he coached. That was fascinating. His wife was a hell of a cook too, so I was looking forward to those meals instead of the cafeteria food. But Ben was he was a great entertainer. And the first time I'm there, he's like, I I'm going to do something. I said, okay, coach. He goes and he gets a shoe shine kit with a little, stand to stick your foot up. He starts shining my shoes. I'm like, coach, I'm not real comfortable with this, And he goes, no, this is what I do. I shine that. He loves shining shoes. I mean, I couldn't believe it. He shined my shoes, boy, like I'd never seen him shine before. It was incredible. But, so that's the experience with him. I get to Cincinnati, and one of the first things, to your point, Paul Brown comes up to me and he said, what was it like playing for Ben? What was Ben like as a football coach? I thought that was really interesting, And then Ben would say, I want to know what Paul Brown's like. I want to know how Paul Brown does things. Will you keep me up to speed about how he handles things? And I mean, it was amazing. And then, right to your point about when did you find out that Paul Brown was a little different and special? Right away. Man, he gets up there to the first meeting. I'm sitting there as my first day at Wilmington College at training camp, and I'm sitting there, and the offensive line has got one area of the classroom, and we're all sitting there, and he just walks in, dressed to a T. I mean, everything's neatly pressed, and he gets up to the podium, and I mean, that room, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, he had the command of that room, and all these big, giant, gargantuan, athletes. And Paul's not a big man of stature, but he carried a big stick, boy, in the game of football. And I knew right then, this is a guy that's in total control. And everything he did was unbelievably organized. Even his first talk to the team was unbelievably organized. And his practices, he was so far ahead of his time, Thom. I mean, he worked us hard, but it was like rapid fire, no wasted time, weren't out there forever, got your work done, get off the football field. Didn't beat us up, back in his era, most of these coaches were Neanderthal in their approach. It's like, we're going to hit you. Man, this is a man's game. If you can't handle this, get out of the game. You're soft or whatever. Paul would do enough hitting that, you knew what you had to do and how you needed to do it, but he didn't beat you up. And he was light years ahead of his time in just about every aspect of football, and then the coaches that he attracted to his staff, like Bill Walsh was the quarterback passing game coach my rookie year. And I'm like, yeah, this guy's he knows what he's doing. I had Bill Tiger Johnson as my line coach, and he ended up being a head coach in the NFL as well. The coaching staff was phenomenal. Everybody wanted to be part of Paul Brown and what Paul Brown was doing. And he was so far ahead of his time in everything that he did, how he structured his offense. He was uniquely special, no doubt about it.
What's a real story, Lap? There have been 1,000 versions of them. I don't even know if you know the real story, but it's been debated. It's been talked about here in Cincinnati. You just mentioned the two names. That's where I was going next. Bill Walsh does not become head coach of the Bengals, and everybody wonders what could have been, what should have been. Bill Tiger Johnson gets a job. God bless him. But Bill Walsh is Bill Walsh. Why was he not the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals after Paul Brown?
To my understanding, and I've heard it from many sources, so I tend to believe it, it's a very simple thing. Paul Brown, a man of his word. Paul Brown told Tiger Johnson was going to be the next head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. He really respected Tiger as a line coach, and he basically gave him his word. And he knew that Bill Johnson was special, but he felt like Tiger was special as well. And the first year that Tiger got the job as head coach, we went 10-4 and didn't make the playoffs even with a 10-4 record. And then Kenny Anderson broke his hand on a helmet in training camp, and he tries to play, but he can't. And we go 0-5 to start the season in Tiger's second year, and then it just kind of fell apart from there. It was unfortunate because if Kenny didn't get hurt, first year's 10-4, who knows where we go if he's not injured. So that's life in the National Football League, though. But as we all know, Paul Brown was right. Bill Walsh was special. Bill Walsh had an unbelievable mind for football. He was a creative offensive genius. There is no two ways about that. And when you put Bill Walsh and Joe Montana together, man, that's like, peanut butter's good, jelly's good, but peanut butter and jelly together, now you got something cooking, man.
Your second year, you become a full-time starter. You mentioned you get to the playoffs. You lose to the Raiders 31-28, Kenny Stabler and that whole crew. Then shortly thereafter, in comes a guy named Forrest Gregg. Again, I reflect back to the days of not having the internet, not having information readily available. How much did you know about Forrest Gregg? And what was that first meeting like when he walked in the door?
Yeah, that's another one that's interesting. I mean, I did, being a big fan of the game, the Green Bay Packers were on all the time, and they were such a great team and such a dynamite powerhouse under Vince Lombardi. I knew everybody on the Green Bay Packers, including Forrest Gregg, and I do remember hearing Vince Lombardi say that Forrest Gregg was the best football player he ever coached. And he had some pretty good ones, with Bart Starr and Jimmy Taylor and Paul
Yeah, he did.
All these guys, it's like, Forrest Gregg's the best football player he ever coached. Wow, that's a big statement. So I knew a little bit about Forrest Gregg, but I didn't know, as much as I was going to find out, obviously, about Forrest Gregg. And the one thing about Forrest Gregg, Vince Lombardi pushed the Packers. The famous Green Bay up-downs. You run in place and you hit the ground in full equipment. You hit on your belly and you pop back up, you run in place. And they are just tiring, man. And you do like 30 of them and then take a break for 5 seconds. And you got to do like 30 more and take another break for 5 seconds. And then you got to run around the field. And Forrest Gregg, he did what Vince Lombardi did. But there was it started in the first meeting when Forrest Gregg got up. In my mind, I'm sitting there in the first team meeting, and I'm looking at this man who's got a very imposing physical presence. And he walks up to the podium, puts his hands on the podium, and he's got Super Bowl rings on each finger, each hand. He's got multiple rings. I'm like, I think I'm going to listen to this dude. I think he knows what he might be talking about. He played for Lombardi, and obviously he was a taskmaster. He really pushed us hard. He really, as Paul Brown's philosophy was, don't kill players. Forrest was get after the players. Right. Paul Brown probably extended my career a little bit, and then Forrest took those years away, man. But you know what? The thing is, he had instantaneous credibility because I knew, and I talked to teammates. I'm like, yeah, man, this is tough, but he did that more. Can you imagine what Vince Lombardi made these guys do? Yeah. He's probably he's not making us do anything more than he didn't do. So in my mind, he's got cred because he did it. And he won championships in doing it. He believes in it. I'm doing it. What the hell?
You get to the Super Bowl, and look, at the end of the day, you're entrenched now as a starter. And the easiest thing in the world, and I was thinking about this on how to ask you this because I always find it so interesting, and I'll reference baseball as an example. And you'll talk to guys that were playing for the Reds before Joe Morgan got there. And how, he was a guy. Yeah, he was the best player, back-to-back MVP. So it's easy to say, well, he's a guy. But, from just a presence, a toughness, a drive, all those kinds of things, that Bengals team that got to the Super Bowl. Now, Kenny Anderson was a league MVP. Munoz comes in, instant star in the league, et cetera, et cetera. You're on the line with him for a decade, or nearly a decade. But was there a player or two that maybe the rest of us wouldn't say, oh, okay, that had a lot to do with those teams getting over that proverbial hump to get the franchise to a Super Bowl for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. You hit on a guy that was massive, and that's Anthony Munoz. You bring a perennial Pro Bowler to the mix up front, it's such a different ball game. It's like, okay, he's the eraser. He's got his guy. Okay, who's got the toughest matchup otherwise? And we'll slide the line and we'll double. We'll figure out ways to take it. He just made the equation so much easier. And then Max Montoya was a hell of a player at the guard position. We had a good offensive line. Max Montoya was phenomenal. I mean, as good a pass blocker as you're going to see in the NFL, and he could pull and and block these little defensive backs who were trying to juke him, and he could change direction in space. I mean, just a great athlete. So we were pretty good up front, and that was a big difference because Kenny was a great player, obviously, but now that we had ways to protect him and ways to run the football with Big Pete Johnson, but a guy that was the X factor in my mind, we had Isaac Curtis and Chris Collinsworth on the outside, and they would, teams wouldn't double both of them, and if they did, my X factor would kill him, Danny Ross. Mm-hmm. Danny Ross, in the middle of the football field, was unbelievable, man. The dude was like Gumby. He was so flexible. He'd take hits and, just kind of like bend around and get up. It's like, how the hell does he get up from that hit? And never drop the football. I mean, he was just unbelievable target at the tight end position. Over 70 catches. This is back in 81 for a tight end to have 70 catches, and just he killed people. So now it's like, man, you got two receivers. You got Steve Kreider as a third receiver. You got Danny Ross. What the hell? And you go two tight end package. You got ML Harris. So I think that Kenny's level of play got to where it should be because he had a line that could work for him and skill guys he could get it to, and he won MVP. On the other side of the football, it's Crumry, man. Tim Crumry, right over that ball, just wearing you out. And I remember his rookie year was my 8th year in the league. I ended up playing 10 in the NFL and 2 in the USFL. And so I'm like, man, Friday is supposed to be half speed, 2-minute drill and stuff. There's no half speed with Tim Crumry. It's like, he's coming, man. It's like a game. And I'm like, Timmy, man, I'm 30 years old, bro. I need to have my Friday. Doesn't take a lot out of me because I got to play 2 days later. Sunday. Why don't you quit then? If you can't handle this, just get out of the game. What the hell? This is the way I do it. I don't go half speed. This is how I play. I'm like, I got it. So we played 200 games that year, going every Friday with Tim Crumry. It was crazy, but he just raised the level of the defensive football team. Man, that dude was, he was, before he shattered that leg, and even afterwards. I mean, for him to play after having the injury that he had to a leg that got gnarled up like that,
Mm-hmm.
for him to come back and play and not miss any games, that's crazy stuff. That's legendary stuff. So I'd say defensively, that addition was massive as well.
All right, so you talked about leaving the Bengals, and all of a sudden you meet this guy, and you've been asked this 1,000 times because, of course, he later becomes president of the United States and Donald Trump.
Right.
He's wheeling and dealing in real estate. He's buying a team in the USFL, the New Jersey Generals. I don't even know where to start. When you met him, what was it like? What was it like then after being around him? How much were you around him? You know where I'm going here. What was it like?
Yeah, it was. He was unbelievable. At that point, he's only in his 30s, late 30s, and he was a dynamo. I mean, just a human dynamo, I think is the best way to put it. And Jim Valek, the general manager for the Generals, reached out to me about, would I want to come and meet with the New Jersey Generals. What they did was NFL players, by geography, you had territorial rights to players in the NFL by where your team was located. So the Generals being in New Jersey, Syracuse was their territorial right for NFL players. So he's like, we'd like to, meet, talk. And so I go to New Jersey, New York City metropolitan area, and Donald Trump in the Trump Tower. Just recently completed Trump Tower, the top floor of the Trump Tower. And man, it's like just as big. The whole top floor is Donald's office, and he's got all kinds of pictures, a lot of pictures of himself. Donald likes Donald, there's no doubt about it. And very accomplished guy, and really, very engaging guy, and what they ended up doing, which was unheard of in 1984. They said, okay, we're gonna offer you a contract, and this is where the information that's out there about this 10-year guaranteed contract is inaccurate. It was a 2-year guaranteed contract. He gave me what he said, I'm going to do a personal services contract. And that personal services contract means that I'm going to guarantee your salary and bonus and everything, whatever there is structurally in the contract, for 2 years. Whether you get hurt, whether you get cut, whether it's injury, lack of performance, whatever it is, you're getting paid for 2 years. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, I played 10 years, 32 years old. Man, it's like a 10-year annuity coming due, you know? It's like, man, guaranteed 2 years of a contract. So I did it. I said, you know, we got ourselves a deal and played for the Generals. And I'll tell you, Tom, playing in the NFL in the 1983 season, a full season, taking every snap basically, and having 2 weeks off, and then going to training camp in January down in Central Florida University with the New Jersey Generals, and no break. And then I had an offensive line coach by the name of Bill Austin. And Bill Austin was an offensive line coach for Vince Lombardi. When Vince Lombardi was with the Washington Redskins, Billy Austin, BA, was his line coach. So you know where I'm going. There were no days off. There were no snaps off. I mean, that back-to-back season, 83 NFL season, 84 USFL season, I played, it was a full season was the USFL played 18 games. So it was, and then there was preseason, 2 preseason games. So it was 20, it was 40. And then postseason, it's like 42 games in 9 months.
Wow.
And no break. I was coming home, rigor mortis, man. I was like, I can't move. I mean, I'm laying on the couch watching some TV and I can't get up. It's like, wow, that was brutal physically. There was no question about it. In hindsight, I didn't realize how tough that was going to be, but it was compounded by the fact that I had an old line coach that there are no veteran days. There are no days off. You don't practice, you don't play, dude. That's the bottom line.
Did you ever spend any more time or through the years later with Trump?
No, not real. He was very hands-on as an owner, Tom. I mean, he would be out there at practices. The great thing was, like, if we played the Jacksonville team, he would fly his, personal Trump helicopter down there and land right by the stadium, and the people would be like, what's going on here? What is this? Is this the FBI? What's going on? And out would get Donald Trump and just come into the stadium with a grand entrance. He was something else. He was he's such a forward thinker, tremendous idea guy. Very, 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 very interesting man. So here recently I have not, and once he got into the political end of things, no, I didn't. Yeah. But I wasn't surprised, listening to him and watching him, how he handled people and situations and everything. Not surprised whatsoever that he got into politics and ended up being president of the United States. There was no shocker there.
You get into broadcasting, and you get a chance with the team you starred for. I mean, you're on the 40th anniversary team, the whole 9 yards, as one of the great offensive linemen, great players in the history of the Bengals. You get into broadcasting, and look, anybody who thinks that walking off the field and walking into the booth is like some easy thing just because you played is simply not the case. I mean, it's taken you a while to get to where you are. Now, you had a lot of success early on in broadcasting, not only with the Bengals, but I mentioned earlier with NBC, with the Big 12 for years and years and years. But that's a tougher transition, I think, than a lot of the general population believes it is. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, there's always a transition. And right away when I was done playing, I was thinking about coaching. I knew I wanted to stay in football. So I remember Tiger Johnson, when I made it as a rookie, way back in 1974, like you said, I was the 61st pick, third-round guy. In today's draft, it would have been a late 61st pick. I was all pumped up. This is great, man. Oh, man, Cincinnati Bengals. And then Paul Brown. And back to your other question about Paul Brown, my grandfather said, son, you're going to be playing potentially for Paul Brown. Do you realize how fortunate you are, son? Come on, man. I'm like, okay, here we go. And then I made it. and it came down to the last cut. I was a 3rd-round pick, and they drafted another guard out of Nebraska in the 4th round, and it was a battle royale, man. And one was going to make it, and one didn't. One wasn't. And he got traded to Green Bay, and I made it. And then Tigers, hey, congratulations. Do this as long as you can, son. Let me tell you something. There's nothing in the world like this. There's no other job out there that has this kind of relationship with other people other than the military. He said, I'll probably give the military, but he said the esprit de corps, all this stuff, it's different. It's different than any other job. And do it as long as you can. So I thought, on Tiger's advice, maybe I'll try to stay in the game. And I was thinking about coaching, and Forrest Gregg was interested in talking about going up there to Green Bay. He was at Green Bay at the time, maybe working with the offensive line up there. And so I'm like, huh. And so my wife Lynn's like, well, enjoy Green Bay. I ain't going. Well, that was the end of that one. So it's like, I don't really necessarily want to move the kids to Green Bay in that weather and all that kind of deal. But honestly, big factor was what's the best decision for the family? Because we had children young and had kids that were already in school, two kids, a boy and a girl, and I'm like, and they love Cincinnati. And they had a bunch of friends, so I wanted to try to keep that as intact as possible. So the broadcast arena was another option because you could still stay involved with the game and maybe do other things if you need to. But that could be a staple where you continue your association with the game that you love. And here it is, 37 years later, still doing the games with the Cincinnati Bengals.
I want to ask you about a couple of issues in the game today before we get to the Bengals. A lot of debate here over the last 3-4 weeks about this roughing the passer thing, about the concussion protocol thing. And a lot of people are weighing in on it, one way, the other way, so on and so forth. I remember I used to get really upset with people a few years ago, Bob Costas being one. And Bob and I have talked about this topic just, on private conversations many, many times about how I think it's easy for the quote-unquote suburban moms and dads to talk about the ills of football and all this kind of thing, right? But if you're fortunate enough like we are, and you start traveling around and you hear the stories of where so many of these kids come from, whether it's rural America out in Wisconsin, an offensive lineman, whether it's the inner city kid in Miami, oftentimes it's the only way out. I don't need some suburban mom from Anderson Township telling me whether or not my kid should play football, okay? There are dangers to the game inherent to the sport. It's a violent game played by big, strong, fast men. Are we getting to the point, though, now, Dave, especially the last couple of weeks, some of these roughing the passers call? We saw it in Kansas City the other night. We saw it with Tom Brady the other day in Tampa Bay. Where are we going? Where should we be going with all this?
That's a great question. I mean, and you talk Bob Costas, just a quick aside there. We both graduated from Syracuse together from the Newhouse School of Communications. He was the star of the Newhouse School of Communications. I'm like, this dude is as good as anybody in the country right now. And he is unbelievable. But that whole dynamic, you're right. The pendulum swings, and when you have something that is so high with social media now, any kind of an injury, it's not just nationally televised. It's like on social media, every form of social media, over and over and everybody weighs in, and it blows up. It's viral. So the pendulum can swing, big swings. And right now, what's going on now is a big reaction to the Tua injury. And the Tua injury involving the Cincinnati Bengals, Josh Tupou made a tackle. And honestly, when I thought there might be a flag because I've seen that flag, and they called it with Tom Brady when he got slung to the ground a little bit. But I thought the penalty was him kicking up at the lineman after he got slung to the ground because I didn't think it was violent. But the Josh Tupou one, and oh boy, is that one, you're not supposed to do it with excessive force. And there was pretty good amount of force there. But like you say, big, strong guys, and he hits his head. But the week before, the Buffalo fiasco was the one where he gets hit, he goes to the ground, he hits his head, He gets up, sits up, shakes his head. And I've done it. I know what that feeling is. Man, there's the bright flash and everything is like super focused. It's like, oh, where am I? You're in La La Land and you're trying to like shake out of it. And I've had many of those episodes, and not come out of a game. But so he's trying to shake it off. He starts to walk, starts shaking it off again. Linemen are staying around him because they know. They've been there. They know what he's doing when he's shaking his head like that. He's shaking out cobwebs. And then he basically loses his balance and almost collapses. And that's not a back injury. I mean, come on, man. So then the very next week, 4 days later, basically, Sunday to Thursday night. So now you have it by definition, a concussion is, your head's traveling to the ground, and now the skull hits the ground, the skull stops, the brain doesn't. The brain keeps going. So inertia takes it right into the skull and bruises your brain. You have a brain injury. You have a bruised brain. You have blood in your brain. And there's different severities to that. But obviously it was an issue because of his reaction afterwards. 4 days later, he hits the same spot. And once you get a concussion, you're more susceptible and vulnerable to having another one because you're already bruised. Now he's got frozen hands. His eyes are out of focus. His eyes are rolling in his head. They said it was ugly out there. That's why the whole team's out there scared and take him off on a stretcher. So now every mother that's watching that game looks at their 10-year-old kid and says, "You're not playing football anymore." I mean, that's just a tough night for football, contact football. So now the league has said, all right, well, we're going to change concussion protocol. If your motor skills are noticeably inhibited, you're out. You're out the rest of the game. Now you have Teddy Bridgewater gets hit in the first play of the following game, and he's rung a little bit. He's done for the game. He passed concussion protocol 4 times. They wouldn't let him back in the game. So, again, the pendulum swings, and so now everything, the hits that you're talking about, the hit on Brady that was flagged, the hit, you have a defensive lineman, Chris Jones makes a great play.
Yep.
Takes the football right out of the quarterback's hands, puts his left arm down to brace to make sure he doesn't fall on top of him full weight. Referee doesn't see that. He sees him fall. He thought on him full weight, throws the flag. So there's the pendulum. It was here, swinging back. You got to find that point that everybody can live with. You got to find that midpoint, and that's going to be, there's going to be all kinds of NFL meetings that go on the rest of the season here and in the off season with the competition committee and all these committees subcommittees that the NFL has, trying to figure out how to keep the game safe, but not overreacting to things.
Okay, overreacting to things. We now get to the current state of the Cincinnati Bengals. Chris Collinsworth was on the show last week, and I know you work for the Bengals. Okay, I used to work for multiple teams in my day broadcasting, whether it was the Cubs, the Diamondbacks, the Reds. They sign your paycheck, and there comes responsibility with that and the people that you work for. So I just want to lay that on the table ahead of time.
Yep.
So as you look at the Bengals, we had Collinsworth last week, and I asked him just a generic question, not in reference to the Bengals, but generically all his years around football. Does he think it's a good idea that the head coach is also the offensive play caller? And look, Sean McVay's a head caller, right? They won the Super Bowl last year. The team that they played in the Super Bowl, Zach Taylor's a play caller, so they got to the Super Bowl. So, look, there's Exhibit A that you can do it. This week, a lot of questions about whether Zach Taylor should continue to call the plays. I said on the show yesterday, there is no way on God's earth he's given up the play calling right now in the current state of the franchise. Is there reason to be concerned about this offense, Dave? Because this is a lot longer stagnation just these first 5 games. It goes back even to the postseason of last year and the last number of regular season games last year as to what they're able to do on offense. Are you concerned about it?
Yes, I am concerned about it. And like you said, Kyle Shanahan's another one, head coach that calls plays. Bill Walsh basically did it. And that, that's obviously, there's reasons for that. One of the greatest play callers ever. But yeah, this year, too many situations where there's been 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, missed executions, low red zone, 1st and goal situations. 12 of those this year. They've only scored 7 touchdowns, and twice have come out with no points. The most famous being 1st and goal at the 2 in this last football game, and run 2 gadget plays in that 4-play sequence where you run the Philly special and you run the shovel pass. I mean, what goes on there is when you decide to run a play like that, you're putting all your chips in the middle of the table. Because if it works, people can be, oh, that's brilliant. Gosh, that was the most unexpected. Oh, my God, this guy is better than football God. If it doesn't work, you are a dog. And it's black and white. There's no gray. There's no in between. Bottom line is, part of it is lack of player execution, a big part of it. But I'm old school. 1st and goal at the 2, put your quarterback under center, run the damn football. At least 1 down, maybe 2, if it's going to take you 4 downs. I have a different mindset on those kind of things. But this year to be 1st and goal 12 times and only score a touchdown on 7 of them, it's like 58%. You got to be at least 66 or 70, 2 out of every 3. There's like 26 of the 32 teams that are over 70%. So that they're lagging in that area. That is a big area. And like you said, it's gone back to prior years as well. Look, in my opinion, when you have the skilled people that they have to go in this last game against Baltimore, the first 13 plays of the game netted them 22 yards. They got 11 yards on the first play. So the other 12 plays netted them 11 yards. They go pick up 11 yards and then 3 downs and punt. 3 straight 3-and-outs. You can't do that. Not with the personnel that you've got, on the football team. And it's a combination. It's not just play calling. It's not just lack of execution. It's both. And they're gonna have to try to find a rhythm and timing, and because starting to run out of time. You're going to have to get it done, get it righted quickly. You're down. You get 5 games are in the bank, and you're sub 500. And Tom, at this point, if they score first, they're 2-0. If they don't, they're 0-3. You're not going to score first in every football game, but you have to get off to a quicker start in more football games than they have. And so far, it's been 3 times they didn't, 2 times they did. Going to have to change those numbers around a little bit. You're going to have to get off to a faster start more frequently. It's not going to happen every game. That's impossible. But you're going to have to do it a lot better than half the time.
The offensive line. They go out and they spend a bunch of money. I give the organization all the credit in the world for doing what they did during this offseason and bringing in these veteran guys who have been around for a while, won Super Bowls, been to playoff games, et cetera, et cetera. I was highly critical of the team. You might emphatically disagree. I was highly critical of that group, and it's just based on conversations I've had through the years with guys like you and Anthony Munoz and 100 other offensive linemen or coaches that tell me the most important group on the field, positional group, to have communication and working together and working in harmony together is the offensive line. I was highly critical of them not playing those guys at all during the preseason. I understand the flip side, don't want to get them hurt, but I just thought with a new group and only one guy back as a starter, it was important. The first 2 games were a disaster. Do you see improvement of that group the last couple of games and moving forward?
I do see improvement, and I think a lot of it is based on who you're playing. The first 2 weeks, they faced the defensive player of the year in TJ Watt, who is a game wrecker, and he wrecked that game on that side of the football. He hasn't played since. The Steelers are 0-7 when he doesn't play in his career. He's that important. And then the following week, Micah Parsons was defensive rookie of the year and runner-up to defensive player of the year to TJ Watt, and he wrecked that game as well. They haven't played that kind of a guy in the defensive front, and they handle things a lot better. So sometimes it's the opposition that you're playing against. But I'm with you. I'm old school. I know I am. But, man, you have to go full speed with the guy next to you to understand, okay, when that ET stunt happens, what level is he going to be setting on? I got to make sure I'm on that same level so we can zone block and pass that stun off. And until you experience it full speed, I mean, it's now you're kind of guessing, and time on task. It's a time on task thing. It's repetition breeds comfort level. And the first couple of games, I made the comment a couple of times. This is like training camp for these guys now. These are preseason games. They're going to be better in week 2 than they were in week 1. And they're going to be better at the end of September than they were at the beginning of September here. And it's just for that reason. Repetition breeds comfort level. So they're going to continue to improve in that regard. Now, they have miles to go before they rest, but they thought, the Rams and the Bengals thought, when we practice against each other for 2 days and we have our periods where it's good contact in the offensive and defensive line, it's just thump drill, we're not going to tackle and take people to the ground. That should be equivalent to what we're getting in the preseason. It didn't work out because the Bengals and the Rams offensive lines were issues to start the season for both teams. So, like you said, they were both in the Super Bowl last year with the mindset of don't beat guys up, make sure availability is the best ability in the National Football League. Make sure these guys can go out in the field for you every single game or as many games as possible. But there is something to getting things timed up, getting synchronized, getting in rhythm, no question.
Lap, we love listening to you, man, every single week. You are just the best. I mean, behind the microphone and just hanging out and spending time with you is always very, very special. We wish you all the best, man, and we thank you sincerely very, very much for your time today.
Thom, I enjoyed it immensely, and I enjoyed doing football games with you.
Yeah,
you're a true professional in every sense of the word, and thanks for the opportunity to visit with you. It was a lot of fun, my man.
Amen, brother. Dave Lapham, one of the all-time greats. He's the Joe Nuxhall of football in this town. And there's no higher compliment you can give, in my opinion, to another human being. I mean, Dave Lapham is he is Cincinnati football. I love that guy. He mentioned we had a chance to do some college stuff together many years ago. His son came in, did the spotting for us in there. He was young. I think he was still playing. He might have been in high school at Moeller. He went on to play football at can't remember if it was football or baseball that he played at Miami. I'm drawing a blank on that. But I mean, and his daughter Sarah. I mean, what a guy! He is just an awesome dude and really good at his job and fun to be around. And we're so appreciative and thankful for his time today. Our next guest, I'm not so sure what an awesome dude he is, but I call him Dad. So we'll have Marty Brennaman on here in a minute to talk about the baseball playoffs. We thank Dave Lapham. Hope you enjoyed it on Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time. And if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Swinney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Swinney, the original used car superstore.
I know one thing, ain't nobody does this better than us. Facts.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. But before we get to my dad, the stuff makes me crazy. And we brought it up yesterday after the Sunday night game of watching Travis Kelce have 7 receptions for 25 yards in the game, and he scores 4 touchdowns. Now, you mean to tell me the Bengals, inside the 2, cannot find a way to isolate one of their star players? Everybody and his brother in the stands, watching on television, on the Raiders sideline, on the Raiders defense, they knew the guy that they were going to try and throw the ball to, Travis Kelce, and they still did it. 4 touchdowns inside the 8, 2 touchdowns inside the 1. And the Bengals can't find a way to get the ball to one of their stars. First and goal from a 2. All right, enough. Shifting gears now to the Hall of Famer, who I believe is down in the Tar Heel state. They actually call it on the license plates in North Carolina. They say First in Flight because, as many of you know,
that's correct.
The Wright brothers left Dayton, Ohio. They went down to Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, technically. Actually, the town is in Nags Head. It's not Kitty Hawk, but where they flew the first plane down there. Because that's where the largest sand dunes are in the United States of America. So if they crash the plane, they'd crash into sand. You are down in North Carolina. Is that correct, Mr. Brennaman?
That is absolutely correct, son. And let me add this addendum to what you were just talking about. People should be made aware of the fact that you know so much about that because there were numerous summers while you were at Ohio U where you'd go down and live with your grandparents and run out of control for a couple of months.
I was working 60 hours a week. I wasn't running out of control that much.
You feel that much. That's the key right there. There were times, you know it, I know it. God bless your grandparents if they were still around. They sure as hell knew it.
They were the best.
You have a captive audience when it comes to the historical significance of Kitty Hawk and Nags Head. That was very good. I like that.
Thank you very, very much. One of the few things that I do know something about in this world. Just ask my wife if you don't believe me. Before we get to the baseball stuff, because people ask me all the time how you're doing, what you're doing. I mean this on a serious note, and for those that I engage in longer conversations with, some longer than others, obviously, like all of us in our day-to-day life, that you are now spending a lot of your time when you're not in Cincinnati, which is most of the time, but you're spending a lot of your time in a little town where you actually started your broadcasting career and have stayed friends with for many, many years down in Salisbury, North Carolina.
That's exactly right. We had the place in Siesta Key, and we reached the point where we were really not using it a whole lot. And so we decided, because Amanda had been here with me a number of times and fell in love with a small college town between Charlotte and Greensboro. And I began my radio career here in 1965 at WSTP Radio, which is no longer in existence, 1,000-watt radio station, and loved the town to the point where when we decided to sell the condo in Siesta Key, we took a look here, and we were gifted. We were blessed because we were able to purchase a great condominium down here. And amazingly, after being gone for 50-plus years, there are still people that I was close to when I was here that are still alive. And so it's like going full circle is what it is. And I've done a little bit of fundraising work for Catawba College. I have a great love for that school because it was instrumental in getting me in my broadcast career off and running. So I'm thrilled to death to be here. I always look forward to coming, and I also look forward to seeing a lot of folks that I've known for a half a century or more.
Let's shift gears to the baseball playoffs. The last time we visited, the wild card round was just getting underway.
Right.
And we walked through, some more than others. They won yesterday in Game 1 after sweeping the Cardinals. The Philadelphia Phillies, I think of all the teams in the postseason, at least through the opening round and now one game into the second round, they have to be the talk of all the teams that are still left, right?
Well, they in Seattle, and of course Seattle crashed and burned yesterday, and I'm sure we'll touch the base on that. But I was stunned with what Philadelphia did, and I take my hat off to Rob Thompson, and I'm thrilled to death that he was able to negotiate a 2-year contract extension with the Philadelphia ownership because it was a job extremely well done. And you're right. But you and I have both seen it. We have been around that game long enough to know, and we talked about it last week about how the Cardinals back in the early part of the century, I don't know, 2003 or 4, were a 500 team when the season ended. They caught fire late, and they just carried it right on through and won a world championship. And so every team that's in the position that the Phillies were in or are still in can look back and say, hey, they did it, why can't we? And they have been very, very impressive. There's no question whatsoever about that.
And I tell you what, Castellanos, look, I didn't get to know the guy very well, just a few brief conversations. I know you weren't still doing the games when he comes here on the 1-year deal and so forth, but he really struggled this season after signing the major deal with the Phillies, $100 million deal. The guy has always been a total gamer, no matter where he played. Detroit, the Cubs, Reds, now Philadelphia. Goes 0 for 7 in the first round in the 2 games against St. Louis, and then delivers big time yesterday. I think there are a lot of Reds fans that were really happy for him getting off to a good start in this series yesterday, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. He was a fan favorite because he legitimately loved the fans. I don't know that the media would say the same thing about him, but I think that when he had 3 hits and drove in 2 runs yesterday, and obviously they need him to hit, even though they were fortunate to get by the Cardinals because St. Louis just stopped hitting. And they were able to get by St. Louis without him being a factor. But as games go on and they continue to win and stay around, it's going to get tougher and tougher. So, yeah, what he did yesterday was huge. And if that's an indication that he's getting on a tear, then all the competition that comes in front of them better look out.
You talked about momentum, and a team that I always remember was the team, the Marlins team that won the World Series the year where they come in as a wild card. They were on a roll at the end of the year. They play the top-seeded Giants at the time, who had Bonds and Kent and so forth. They sweep them immediately, 3 in a row in a best-of-5. Then they go on and win the league championship series over the Cubs and so forth. That momentum, I think, I'm curious to hear what you think. You juxtapose the Phillies, who come in on a roll after sweeping St. Louis. They win that first game against Atlanta. You mentioned Seattle. They sweep Toronto 2 in a row. Now they come into the series against Houston. They got that 7-3 lead, and now all of a sudden, 2 in the 8th, walk-off homer, 3-run blast in the 9th. I wonder if that can just slam the door shut on that momentum.
Well, I mean, we'll find out. And if it does, it'll be understandable. I don't know who did the game yesterday, but I know that somebody made the comment, even either at the site where the game was played or when they threw it back to the studio, that this was the kind of loss that Seattle may never, ever be able to overcome. And it might be. They're newcomers to this thing. They haven't made the postseason since, 2001 or something like that, something ridiculous. And none of these guys, except for veteran players maybe that they've dealt with, and maybe none of them, have ever been confronted by the type of pressure and the type of drama that every hit, every pitch, every out hinges on. So this next game coming up for them tomorrow is very, very important, because if they lose tomorrow, you can pretty much stick a fork in them. And I guarantee you Scott Service knows that as well as anybody. I want Houston to win because of my affection for Dusty. You had to feel for the Seattle Ball Club. One of the most dramatic moments that we've seen in years, and Alvarez made no bones about it. When that ball left the bat, the game was over. And it's one of the great things that make baseball such a great sport, especially in postseason play.
You know, Dad, I look at the move made by Service, and this isn't second guessing because I made reference before you joined us when I was doing the Diamondbacks games. I think it's very different when you get to game 5, 6, or 7. And I use the example about Randy Johnson in the World Series of 01, started and won game 6. He was brought in the 9th inning of game 7 to get the final 3 outs in the top of the 9th. So doing things like that, I understand it when you get late in series. I don't like what Service did yesterday when asking Robbie Ray, a Cy Young Award winner, who's not pitched in the bullpen all season long. You got other guys down there that have done a good job for you, and you ask him to come in to do something that he has very little, if any, experience. Now, does that mean he's going to give up a 3-run home run down the game? No, it doesn't. I just think it's I almost think it's panic mode in game 1 of a series.
Well, you know, and you may be right. Because I know that when you talk about the assets that a Seattle club had, they had one of the best bullpens in baseball. Without the work that they got from their bullpen, they would not have been in a position to lose that game because they would not have been around. At the same time, I'm sure that his thinking was, I'm going to go with a very, very difficult left-hander to face a very, very tough left-hand hitter. So in terms of the left-hander versus a left-hander thing, it was fine. He made a bad pitch, and Alvarez, who's missed very few of them this year, didn't miss that one. But again, if you look on the negative side, you might say that, and again, this I agree with you, it's not a knock on Scott Service because I think he's done a marvelous job of managing that club and getting them to a position that they've not been in years. But maybe there was a little bit of panic setting in. And maybe he felt like I'm going with one of the better pitchers in the league to try and get this guy out and wrap this game up. But it failed. I'd love to know, you know, when the dust is settled, whether they go on and win a world championship or whether they're eliminated at what point, whether or not someone would sit down with him in a calmer moment and said, you know, what was going through your mind? And probably they did. I'm going to go back and look and see if I can find information about that in the Seattle newspaper and see if anybody ever asked him why him rather than going with somebody that's been doing it all year long in your bullpen.
Well, look, I mean, I'm biased. My next door neighbor for the last 12, 14 years was on his way to the All-Star game this year with Seattle, and Eric Swanson, their closer. He has had a phenomenal year. And even after coming back from getting injured, he did not pitch at all in the game yesterday.
Right.
His numbers on the year, he's faced 193 batters. He's given up 39 hits. The league is batting .202 against him for the year. And you're bringing in a starter. Okay, anyway, I just had to get that in because I love the kid and I love his family, and I can't believe he didn't pitch in a game yesterday, especially after it went to the 8th inning in a 3-run spread.
Right.
You go to the Guardians. 2-game sweep, bang, bang, just like that. They go to the Bronx. And obviously, when you don't have to play in the first round, you get to set up your pitchers. Garrett Cole looked like the ace that he is last night. But I don't know about you. I wouldn't count the Guardians out of this series. What do you think?
Well, I don't know, Tom. I have such a great feel and a long-time friendship with Terry Francona. And even though Aaron Boone is one of my favorites, I would love to see Francona go ahead and overcome that first game loss and win the series. You know, the Yankees, they have such an incredible level of talent on that team. When you get a Harrison Bader hits a big early home run in that game. Here's a guy they got from St. Louis, and he's a nice player. But if you're going to pick somebody to go deep, it ain't going to be Harrison Bader. So they can beat you with so many weapons, and they got the kind of, as you said, the kind of pitching performance Aaron did out of Garrett Cole that you would expect out of a hammer. The one thing that I believe in the long term, unless the Yankees would just win tomorrow and whenever they play again and then sweep the series, if this thing goes on, the Yankees have a decided disadvantage, and they've got 5 members of their bullpen that are not on this roster. starting with Aroldis Chapman, and I'd try like hell to figure out a way to get rid of his ass when the season's over if I were the Yankees. But they've got 5 guys that pitch very well for them during the season that, for whatever the reason, whatever the injury might be, are not available to them. And so if they get a pitching performance not of the ilk of a Garrett Cole in Game 2 or Game 3, and they got to go to that bullpen early, they have a problem. And I'm sure that Terry knows that, but yet they've got to be able to come back with a performance from an offensive standpoint in Game 2 that's a hell of a lot better than what they showed last night.
Then there's the Dodgers.
Yep.
I mean, look, I don't have a crystal ball, nor do you, but the regular season numbers simply do not lie. This is a juggernaut team. And they might lose the next 3 in a row to San Diego. They beat them 14 out of 19 during the regular year. They win Game 1 last night, 5-3. Their bullpen, 4 shutout innings to win it 5-3. I got to tell you, Dad, and this is as good of a major league team, and this run they've had the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not going to compare it to the Big Red Machine. No one would ever do that. But this is pretty incredible operation they're running out there in Los Angeles.
No, you said it all. And the thing that I would hope that people would not overlook, and you bring up the Big Red Machine, and during that incredible run for that team back in the 70s, there were so many naysayers that say, hell, the people talk about how good a manager Sparky Anderson is. A first grader could manage that club. And there are people, I think, that are essentially saying similar things about Dave Roberts. I think Dave Roberts is a perfect guy for that team. They have great cohesiveness, at least to the general public, and who knows what might go on in the clubhouse. I got a feeling it's as good in the clubhouse as it is on the field. But this guy, I think, has done a wonderful job of having been given great talent through signing free agents and trading for players and drafting well and bringing those kids through the system. And he's been able to mold that team into the kind of talented ball club that they have. And, you know, one of my favorite players in the game, even though he went to NC State, that's a negative against him, Trey Turner. He's about as good a player as there is in baseball now from an all-around standpoint, because he can do he can hit for power, he can steal bases, he's an outstanding fielder. They just have incredible talent. And but having it is one thing, and going out and proving that you're as good as the talent would indicate is something else. And I agree with you. Last night, Rio went 5 innings, and had electric stuff. The only negative I have about him is he's a damn 5-inning pitcher. I'm not a big fan of 5-inning pitchers, but that's what he is. But yet the bullpen comes up and throws blanks for the last 4 innings. We talked last week or the week before who our pick was, and until somebody proves me wrong, and even though I want Houston to win it all, if it can't be Houston, it's Cleveland. I still maintain when the dust is settled and game whatever is in the World Series is over with, the Dodgers will be world champions again.
All right, I got one more baseball question for you, and then something a little bit on the lighter side. What were your thoughts of the whole Buck Showalter thing, asking the umpire to check? I mean, I'm serious about this because, you know, look, I see all sides of it because, I mean, Buck, you and I have talked about this, Dad. This guy's a hell of a manager. And they won 101 games this year. He's restored order to a place there's been very little order, seemingly for decades, outside of a year here, a couple years there with the Mets. He did a great job. His team's getting dominated in the third and decisive game by Musgrove on the mound. And Buck did not apologize in any form or fashion after the game, saying, hey, look, you know, our numbers are telling us the spin rate's different, the velocity's different. There's some things going on there. I want him checked by the umpires right now. What did you think about it?
Well, I thought he had the guts to do it. When he came up empty, he looked like a bush leaguer. And you're right. He did not apologize for what he did. He said, my first priority is my team. And all his numbers across the board, at least for a couple of his pitches, the spin rate was higher than it normally is. I thought it made him look real bad, because if he was trying to upset Musgrove, he failed miserably. We'll never know, because his story is I felt like it was something that needed to be addressed. And I give the umpires a lot of credit. They almost undressed that kid on the mound, feeling behind his ears and rubbing the side of his face and doing everything that they possibly could do to make a definite decision. Yes, he is, or no, he isn't. I took a dim view of it. I was, because to me, it smacked of this is a high school or college move right here. This is not a Major League Baseball move. And now I know you would disagree with that. I just think that it was best left alone. And again, I truly believe that his intention was to have Joe Musgrove become all unbent, and that did not happen. And of course, Musgrove gave the sign under the nose when he got that strikeout after play was resumed. It was an interesting thing. And my first reaction was that he's trying to get this kid unnerved.
Yeah.
Not one bit did I dwell on the fact that his spin rate was up. I think kids today are too stupid to do something, or too smart to do something like that in light of all the publicity that has surrounded guys using illegal substances on the mound. So it was what it was, but it was one of those interesting moments in postseason history.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to run a clip for you here in a second. But I want to ask you, did you see any of our interview with Tracy Jones yesterday on vacation down in Mexico?
I did not. I was out most of the day, so I did not see it.
Okay, well, you've worked with Tracy on Brennaman and Jones in baseball forever. You know who Tracy is, what he's all about, far better than I do. But just to tee it up a little bit, Tracy and his wife, Danae, he surprised her with this trip to a resort, unnamed resort. To quote him, he says it's a 6-star resort, although I've never heard of anything beyond a 5-star, but if he says 6-star, I'll go with it. But we had him on from Mexico yesterday, and we're going to play a clip, and I'd like to get your reaction. I want to make sure you can see us okay, right?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, all right, here we go. Casey, let her rip.
I got to tell you, Tom, this place is an absolute dump. It was supposed to be some 6-star resort, and I'm not liking it. Can you hear the construction over here? There we got the construction over there. There's a swamp right in front of me.
I couldn't hear it. I can't hear you now.
Hear me?
Yes, I hear you now.
All right, so we're going to play this again. This is me asking Tracy. This is our very first time he comes on yesterday about
Am I going to be able to hear it?
Yes, this time you'll be able to hear it about this 6-star resort where Tracy Jones is staying in Mexico. Here you go.
I got to tell you, Tom, this place is an absolute dump. It was supposed to be some 6-star resort, and I'm not liking it. Can you hear the construction over here? There we got the construction over there. There's a swamp right in front of me. It's a dump, and I'm very disappointed. My wife's disappointed. We've tried to get different rooms. We can't get different rooms. She's threatened me to go Giselle on me, and you know what that means. That means it's going to cost me a few $1 million. I'm very upset, and I'll tell you who I'm mad at too, Tom, and that's you. You know, I had to do it. Listen to this. 6 o'clock in the morning, I get this banging on my door. And I'm going, who in the hell is this? And I yell, yes, can I help you? Yeah, this is Chatterbox Telemundo ready for your interview. Really, Tom? At 6 o'clock in the morning? What's the matter with you?
Any reaction to any or all of that, minus the Chatterbox Telemundo? Our crew showed up early, but Tracy's a high roller, as you know.
You know, it's a complete about face from what he said to you last week before he embarked on that trip down to Cancun. It disappoints me a little bit because I think Tracy is a bright guy, but he really did not do his homework as to the quality of resort that he was taking his lovely wife Danae to. And this is all on him. It's got a blasted thing to do with you sending that crew to his room at 6 a.m. in the morning. Get your butt out of bed and get ready for a public TV appearance. I will visit with him about this, and I will try to counsel him as best I can to do a little bit more research before you commit yourself and before you boast of a quote unquote 6-star resort. Give me a break.
You know, he had marital advice. Casey is getting married in June. Paul is still single, though dating a woman for a while now anyway. Right, Paul? Yeah, 5 years. Okay, that's a long time. Probably too long to date. But he gave them marital advice and suggesting to Casey that he look into a prenup before Casey gets married in June. Now, you are a man who has been married and happily married now for round 3. Would you go step in step for Casey? And Casey, if you want to jump on, now you're getting the marital advice from Tracy Jones yesterday, Marty Brennaman today. What are your thoughts on that, Dad, if any?
Well, you know, I have waxed eloquent at times when I go around and speak to various and sundry groups, and that the road to matrimonial bliss has been a very expensive one for me. But I feel like that I hit the jackpot the third time around because she has been marvelous in terms of keeping an 80-year-old guy as young as he can be and not sitting on my butt. That's got nothing to do with Casey. It's hard for me to comment on that because I don't know this wonderful young woman that you're on the verge of marrying. And I'm sure that you have a great feel for this being it. Yes. A lot of guys have said that, man.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys have said that. Then they had to bend over and kiss their butt goodbye. You're looking at one of them. I had a tough time, but as I say, I hope that, and I give credit to people like Thom, and hopefully in the years to come, I can shake your hand and say, God bless you, because I have an incredible amount of respect and honor those guys and those women that can get married. And when the day comes that one or both pass on to a better world, they were married when they both passed on, just like they married 100 years ago. I use that term matrimonial bliss as a joke, but at the same time, I think it says an awful lot about the people involved that they can commit to one man or one woman, and they stand by that through all the years. I wish you the best of luck. As far as a premarital deal is concerned, you need to talk to somebody besides me.
Thank you, Marty. I appreciate that.
Tracy was on a roll yesterday, Dad.
Huh?
Tracy was on a roll yesterday.
Yeah, when's he coming home?
I don't know. He's going to join us still down in Mexico tomorrow. I assume he's probably coming back sometime this weekend. But he was on a roll. He was very upset.
And but you know what I find interesting in watching that clip? He's been down in Mexico now for a number of days. It's warm, no rain, and every time I lay eyes on him, whether it's at the studios at WLW Radio when he and I do our radio show or when he's on with you, he still looks like he's been painting closets.
Yeah, he does.
And he looks like they've just dug him up. I mean, don't be afraid to get out in the sun a little bit. If you're not going to get out in the sun, stay the hell home. I got to talk to him.
Well, I mean, he talked about going down to the clothing optional beach for quite a while, and what that whole experience was like. He said he's very uncomfortable.
Did he go?
He said he did. I don't know. And I'm not going to get into his nicknames and all that other kind of thing because I'll let him share.
No, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good thing. You don't want to get involved in that. That's the same approach I take with you.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will check in again next week. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Love you too, Brandon. Apparently he's not there today.
Well, no, he's here, but we've put him in the corner now, almost like the old school days. You can't do it anymore because you don't want to hurt any of the snowflakes' feelings out there these days, including my kids, so I can say that. But he's sitting there like in the corner. He should be wearing a dunce cap down there.
I'm working.
He says he's working.
They're the dynamic duo. Casey and Brandon. That's it.
That's right. And Paul Fritcher, Dad, he's one of the next great play-by-play guys out there. If he can get away from the gambling table. If he can get away from the gambling table.
He'll have my support because there are a whole bunch of them that ain't worth a damn.
Hopefully I am worth a little something, Marty.
I'm sure you will be, son.
You know, he was a guy, Dad, that filled in for Joe Sunderman doing the Xavier basketball games while he was still in school there. So, I mean, he's got it going on. It's a big league operator.
God bless you.
That's right.
I hope it's nothing but success for you, son.
Appreciate it, Marty. Thank you.
All right,
buddy. Dad. Have a great day today. Enjoy
Tom,
whatever it is you're doing down there.
Give my love to Polly and the kids.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
All right, Ben. I'll see you.
Our son was on the microphone last night out at his high school announcing the soccer game. So that was cool to watch. Okay. Well, let's just get right to the cherry on top and call it a day, man.
Yeah, sounds
You know
good.
what? I wish we'd have kept my dad on the line for this. I really do. I forgot this is where we were going. Paul, fill us in, please.
Yeah, today is the 2-year anniversary, or I guess anniversary is probably not the best way to put it, but 2 years ago today was when Joe Morgan passed away.
I cannot believe it's been 2 years.
Yeah, really. It seems like yesterday.
I met him in 1974 at Al Lopez Field in Tampa, Florida, when the Reds had their spring training there, and my dad had just gotten the Reds job. And I met Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Tony Perez. And as the years went by, years later, I'm announcing the Reds games on TV with Johnny Bench and Pete Rose as a manager. But the one guy that I saw regularly, more frequently, than any of those guys as my career went on was Joe Morgan. He was doing the Sunday night game of the week baseball for ESPN forever with John Miller. It seemed like they were doing a lot of the teams that I was broadcasting for, and we'd have a chance to have dinner on a Saturday night or before the game on a Sunday night when he come into town. And I've often said, I don't care if you're white, if you're black, if you're green, or anything in between. If you want to put up a guy who was a role model in multiple different facets of life, player, 2-time MVP, broadcaster, should have gone in as a Ford Frick winner. Tim McCarver became the first color analyst to go in. Right behind him should have been Joe Morgan. And maybe he still will go in, even though he's passed. A businessman. Owned multiple Wendy's franchises. Owned multiple Coors beer distributorships. Obviously still a Honda dealer, I think it is, here in Cincinnati. This guy, his work with the Hall of Fame, as the right-hand man, navigating through a lot of tough times for Bud Selig. This guy was it. In everything he did, he became the very, very best at it. And I was privileged and honored and blessed to have known him. And Joe, we miss you. So on that note, that's our cherry on top presented by United Dairy Farmers. And Joe Morgan was always the cherry on top, whatever he did, wherever he went. We thank Casey and Paul, to a significantly lesser extent, Brandon Seho. We thank Dave Lapham. We thank Marty Brennaman. We thank you for joining us. We're getting into football big time tomorrow as we're getting ready for the weekend. Zim Hude makes a return tomorrow. So does Tracy Jones. See ya.